The air smelled like lavender and champagne, delicate and celebratory, like something was about to begin. The sun was setting behind the hills, casting a soft golden haze over everything. I remember standing there, clutching my bouquet, trying not to cry before the ceremony even started. Jake looked so handsome in his charcoal suit, cracking quiet jokes to calm my nerves. We weren't just guests today. We were standing up there with them, maid of honor and best man. It felt like more than a title. It felt like a promise. Claire and James had been part of our lives forever. The four of us. We were inseparable since college. Study nights that turned into sleepovers, breakups followed by ice cream and ugly crying, job rejections, birthdays, spontaneous road trips. All of it. We knew each other's scars and secrets. Watching Claire walk down that aisle, veil billowing in the breeze, I thought, this is what it's all been leading to. This moment. This happiness. And when they said, "I do," I don't think there was a dry eye in the crowd, including mine. It felt like watching your favorite movie ending exactly how it should. The kiss, the cheers, the petals in the air. It was perfect. Everything about it. Or so I thought. The reception was like something out of a fairy tale. Strings of lights twinkled above us, the band played soft jazz that slowly turned into dance floor favorites, and the wine flowed like nobody had to wake up the next morning. I danced until my feet started to ache. With Jake, with Claire, with James, even with Claire's grandmother who insisted she still had moves. My cheeks hurt from smiling so much. Every few minutes someone would raise a glass to love, to friendship, to new beginnings. And I believed it all, with my whole heart. I kept sneaking glances at Jake across the room, the way he laughed with James, the way his hand brushed my lower back when he passed by me, the way he winked when I caught his eye. After everything life had thrown at us, I felt lucky, safe. Like maybe, just maybe, we'd made it to the part of the story where everything stays good. The kind of love that doesn't crack under pressure. The kind of marriage that lasts. At one point, I stepped outside for a breath of fresh air and just stood there watching everyone through the window, dancing, laughing, living. And I remember thinking, this is it. This is one of those nights I'll remember forever. And I was right, just not for the reason I thought. At some point, I found myself off to the side with Claire. She had that glow. You know, the post-ceremony. Just married. Can't believe it's real kind of glow. We clinked glasses, giggling like we were back in our dorm room, drunk on cheap wine and gossip. She squeezed my hand and said, "I couldn't have done this without you." And I meant it when I told her I loved her. Because I did. We had history. Real history. And standing next to her on her wedding day felt like something sacred. Jake came up behind me then, wrapped his arms around my waist, and whispered something stupid in my ear. Something that made me laugh so hard I nearly dropped my glass. God, I remember feeling so full. Like my heart had run out of space from so much happiness. I don't know how else to put it. That night felt like a gift. Like everything had aligned just right. I had no idea the ground was already shifting beneath my feet, that while I danced and toasted and believed in every word we said, someone else was rewriting the story. And I was about to walk right into the part no one talks about in fairy tales. I remember feeling a chill run up my arms, just a sudden drop in the air, like the night had shifted gears. It was getting late, and most people were either on their third cocktail or barefoot on the dance floor. I reached for Jake, ready to ask if he could grab my jacket from the car. But when I turned around, he wasn't there. I scanned the room. No familiar face, no tall frame in a gray suit, just strangers and music. My first thought? He probably stepped outside to take a call or grab some air. Nothing strange. But something about the way my stomach fluttered didn't sit right. I asked a few people in passing, "Have you seen Jake?" Everyone just smiled and shook their heads, too caught up in their own conversations to notice the tiny alarm bell starting to ring in my chest. I told myself not to be dramatic. It's a wedding. People wander. Still, that uneasy feeling kept growing. You know that quiet panic you try to smother before it becomes something real? That's where I was. So I slipped off my heels, grabbed the edge of my dress, and made my way toward the parking lot. The ground was cool beneath my feet, gravel crunching with every step. I laughed to myself, half amused, half annoyed, picturing Jake scrolling through sports scores or lost in conversation with some old classmate. But then, I saw it. Movement. A shadow, inside our car. At first, I just froze. My brain couldn't quite catch up with what my eyes were seeing. The interior light had flickered on, barely, just enough to silhouette two figures. I squinted through the windshield, heart thudding louder with every step. The shapes were close, too close. One of them moved, a hand maybe, a head leaning in. I didn't want to believe it. My mind kept trying to rewrite the image, to make it harmless. A hug, a laugh, anything but what I was really seeing. But as I stepped closer, barefoot and breathless, the light hit just right. I saw her hair first, curled, pinned, familiar, Claire, and then Jake. His hands on her face, their lips meeting like no one was ever supposed to see. And for a second, I didn't breathe. Everything inside me just shut down. Like someone had flipped a switch and the whole world went dark. I didn't think. I reacted. My fist hit the glass so hard it made them jump. Claire's head snapped toward me. Her makeup was smudged, eyes wide with horror. Jake looked like he'd seen a ghost. Good. Because the woman standing outside that car wasn't the same one he'd left behind on the dance floor. She was someone else now. Someone who had just watched her entire life break like glass. I yanked at the car door handle like I could tear the whole thing off. I wanted to scream, to drag them both out, to make them explain what the hell I was seeing. But no words came out, just this guttural, raw sound I didn't recognize as my own. Jake scrambled to zip up his pants. Claire tried to pull her dress back into place like modesty mattered now. They didn't even try to lie. Just stood there, caught, cornered, silent. And for a second, I wished one of them would say something, anything. But they just stared. I didn't wait. I couldn't. I turned and ran, heels in one hand, heart in the other, mascara streaming down my face. My chest burned, my skin felt too tight for my body, and the night air stung like betrayal. But somewhere inside the chaos, something in me started to click into place. Not break, not fall apart. No, click. Like a key turning, like resolve. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to collapse. As I approached the venue, I could still hear the music. Laughter, clinking glasses. The world hadn't stopped, but I had. And I knew one thing. If they wanted this wedding to be unforgettable, they were about to get their wish. I don't even remember how I made it back inside. My body moved, but my mind was stuck in that parking lot, staring through that fogged-up window. The music hit me like a slap. Too loud, too happy, too wrong. Couples were dancing, swaying to some romantic ballad, completely unaware that the fairy tale had already started to rot. I slipped through the crowd, dazed, jaw clenched, chest tight. A few people smiled at me as I passed. I smiled back. My lips moved out of habit, not kindness. Somewhere near the bar, someone shouted my name. I kept walking. I could feel mascara drying in streaks down my cheeks like war paint. I didn't wipe it off. I didn't hide. What was the point? I'd spent the entire day believing in something that wasn't real, pretending I was part of some beautiful love story. And now I was the outsider in a story I helped build. The irony stung. I passed the dessert table, the dance floor, the photo booth filled with laughing friends. But I didn't see any of it. All I saw was Claire, my Claire, tangled up with Jake like I never mattered. My best friend and my husband, wrapped around each other like the vows I witnessed were just part of the show. And suddenly, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I pushed open the side door to the ballroom just as James raised his glass. He was mid-toast, thanking guests, gushing about Claire, cracking jokes like any newlywed would. People were laughing, leaning in, clinking glasses. But when I stepped inside, something shifted. The music dimmed, heads turned. I must have looked like a ghost. Bare feet, makeup smudged, hair wild from the wind. But I felt calm. Too calm. like the kind of calm that comes right before a storm tears through everything. James spotted me first. He smiled, confused. "Hey, there she is, our beautiful maid of—" I walked straight toward the mic, took it from his hand gently, like I wasn't about to detonate the entire evening. There was a split second of silence. Then I said it. "Sorry to interrupt, but I think the bride and the best man forgot to mention one thing in their speeches." The room went still, frozen forks, halted whispers, wide eyes. I could see Claire just outside the doorway behind me. Her expression told me she'd heard every word. "I just caught my husband and Claire kissing in the car," I said, steady as stone. "Happy honeymoon." Gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I just looked out at all those stunned faces, holding their champagne flutes like they'd forgotten what celebration even meant. Claire stumbled in behind me, dress crooked, lipstick smeared, her face pale with panic. She opened her mouth, probably to lie, to explain, to save face, but nothing came out. Jake appeared a second later, looking like a man who'd just realized the fire was real, and the exit was gone. James stood there, frozen, jaw slack, like someone had just unplugged his whole world. I met his eyes. I wanted him to see it. The truth, the betrayal, the wreckage. All of it. And then I let the mic fall. It clattered against the floor, a perfect, final note. I turned and walked out without another word, my head high, heart racing, not with pain this time, but with power. Let them clean up the mess. I had just set it on fire. The night air wrapped around me as I stepped outside, but I barely felt it. My skin was buzzing, my hands shaking, not from nerves, but adrenaline. Inside, I could still hear the muted chaos. Raised voices, the clatter of chairs, someone shouting Claire's name. I kept walking, past the garden lights, past the champagne tower, past everything I had once thought was beautiful about that day. For a second, I thought I might just leave. Get in the car, drive, disappear from the story altogether. But something in me turned around. It wasn't enough to walk away, not this time. For years I'd been quiet, the peacekeeper, the fixer, the one who let things slide for the sake of harmony. But this deserved a spotlight. I wasn't the one who'd created the scene. I was just the one brave enough to show it. So I took a breath, turned on my heel, and walked right back into that room. Head high, spine straight. And not for 1 second did I apologize. James was still standing by the mic, stunned, clutching his champagne like it might explain everything if he stared into it long enough. Guests whispered in corners. Some stared, others avoided eye contact entirely. And Claire? She was crying, loudly, performatively, as if her tears could wash away what I'd exposed. I didn't buy it. Not anymore. I made my way to the bar, asked for water, not to hydrate, but to steady my hands. The bartender gave me that look people give when they don't know what to say, so they say nothing. I preferred it that way. Let the silence speak. A few guests came up, murmuring things like, "Are you okay?" and "I'm so sorry." But I just nodded. What was there to say? They weren't sorry for me. They were sorry for the mess. Sorry the fairy tale got stained in front of them. Claire tried to approach me. I saw her coming from the corner of my eye, her dress twisted at the waist, hair no longer picture perfect, lips trembling. She called my name softly, like I might still be the girl who would take her hand and talk this out in a bathroom stall. I turned my back to her before she got close. I wasn't hers anymore, not her safety net, not her secret keeper. That version of me had died in the parking lot. Jake stayed in the shadows. I think he knew better than to try. Cowards always do. I half wondered if he even understood what he'd done, not just to me, but to the foundation we all stood on. This wasn't just about infidelity. It was betrayal of a deeper kind, the kind that slices through history and memory like a hot knife through cake. James finally spoke. I saw it. the realization washing over him like a cold tide. He didn't shout, didn't cry, just stared at Claire like he didn't recognize the woman he'd married a few hours earlier. And maybe he didn't. Maybe none of us really knew her. He set his champagne down, slow and careful, and walked away from the center of the room without a word. That silence said more than any speech ever could. The DJ didn't know what to do. The music stopped. People hovered in uncomfortable clusters, unsure whether to leave or stay and witness more of the unraveling. I stood at the edge of it all, watching what used to be a celebration dissolve into a cautionary tale. Some people looked at me with pity. Others with awe. One woman whispered, "I could never have done that." And maybe that's what stuck with me the most, because just hours earlier, I would have said the same. But here I was, the woman who walked into a wedding thinking she had everything, and walked out knowing exactly what she'd lost, and what she'd never allow again. And I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The days that followed were a blur of headlines and whispers. People talked. Of course they did. The wedding from hell. The betrayal caught on camera. There were photos, rumors, half-truths spreading like wildfire. But I didn't hide. I didn't correct anyone. I let the story tell itself, because for once I didn't need to explain. They saw it. They heard it. They knew. And in that strange, twisted way, I felt free. Stripped, yes, but free. I filed for divorce before the cake had even been boxed up. Jake didn't fight it. Maybe guilt made him quiet. Or maybe he knew he didn't have a leg to stand on. Either way, I packed my things, left the keys on the counter, and walked out of the life we built with no intention of ever looking back. People kept asking how I was doing. I said I was fine. I wasn't lying. I was just rewiring, waking up, coming back to myself after years of bending to fit someone else's picture. I started journaling at first, just late-night scribbles to make sense of the noise in my head. But something in it cracked open. A voice, a purpose, a fury that wasn't just mine, but shared by so many women who'd smiled through betrayal, who'd swallowed their pain for the sake of appearances. So I turned my story outward. A blog, then a podcast. I called it The Maid of Dishonor. Fitting, right? The response was bigger than I expected. Women from all over wrote in. Strangers, friends of friends, even quiet acquaintances I barely remembered. They shared their stories, their heartbreaks, their quiet revenge, their strength. Some of them cried with me. Some laughed. Some said my story gave them the push they needed to finally leave. That's when I realized maybe what happened to me wasn't just an ending. Maybe it was a beginning. Not just mine, but ours. Jake and Claire, they became footnotes. Most of our friends cut ties with both of them. James canceled the honeymoon, annulled the marriage, and moved out of state. I heard from him once, a short message that simply said, "Thank you for telling the truth." That meant more than he probably knew. The rest of it? I didn't chase it, didn't stalk their social media, didn't track who stayed loyal to who. I had better things to build, like a life that didn't require me to shrink. Little by little, I filled my days with things that actually fed me. I redecorated my apartment with bright colors, things Jake would have called too much. I drank coffee in bed, took up painting, started talking to people I'd forgotten I loved, and with every new habit, every brave moment, I reclaimed another piece of myself that had gone quiet over the years. Months later, I stood at another celebration, this time in my own honor. It wasn't a wedding, no flowing white gown, no vows, no champagne flutes clinking to false promises, just friends, real ones, gathered in a little event space downtown. The air smelled like jasmine and hope. There was laughter, warmth, truth. And when someone handed me the mic, yes, again, I smiled. Not out of vengeance, but out of something deeper. Something whole. I looked around the room at the people who stood by me, not out of obligation, but out of love. People who had held my hand through the fire and helped me build something new from the ashes. And for the first time in a long time, I felt full. Not with fantasy, but with something real. I raised my glass, let the silence settle, and then said, "Some weddings end with cake. Mine ended with the truth." They clapped. I laughed. And this time, I wasn't the woman left outside in the cold. I was the one holding the door open for others. The fool was gone. What remained was someone I could finally be proud of.